Styrofoam carving and resin coating. We're going to make some props, carving some styrofoam and then hard coating those props with resin. To start, we need to carve our prop. We're using the foam cutting scroll saw here. This just uses a hot wire. This is a hot wire foam factory tool that we now have at our store that you can use to cut through styrofoam to make precise cuts, either to cut out letters or cut out shapes like this. Here we've just traced out some lines that we're cutting off with this scroll saw to create a little panel that's going to look like stainless steel. And we're going to create an area for little recessed bolts by using one of the foam carving tools, or the sculpting tool, I believe they call it. And the nice thing about these tools using a hot wire is they cauterize the surrounding foam so that you have a nice clean cut area, and you don't it actually gives a nice cauterized area around the cut so you don't have open cells of foam exposed. Now once we carve out the shape we want, we'll be ready to coat our styrofoam with some resin. Now we can do this one of two ways. We could either spray this on with the EZ Flo spray resin, or in this case, since we wanted to show an option to do this without a spray setup, since this is a flat piece, we're just going to put this up on some little risers of some more scrap pieces of foam and brush some EZ Flo 120 over the top. Now the reason we chose EZ Flo 120 is the EZ Flo 120 is a little thicker resin than EZ Flo 60 or EZ Flo 95. It's actually designed for rotational casting, so it's a little syrupy, a little more of a syrupy consistency. So we're going to mix up about a 6-ounce batch of EZ Flo 120 and stir that up. And you also notice we added some black polycolor pigment. And we're going to brush this onto our little panel here, and since this is a self-leveling liquid, when we brush this on, it'll give us a nice gloss surface. Now typically one coating like this won't be enough to get it exactly the look we need, so we'll actually have to do 2 coats to get a nice smooth surface. Then we can do any sanding that we have to do from that point on. But we want to brush that out very quickly. We've got about 2.5 minutes of working time, which is about perfect for this kind of process, because we don't want to have too much working time or our resin will just run off of our pattern and create little puddles on the table and not on the part that we're trying to coat. So we want to move quick and deliberately and make sure we get an even coat of resin all over the piece. And since it is self-leveling, the top will start to gloss over as the resin sets. Now, like I said, we're going to need 2 coats of resin for this particular part, because it's not quite as glossy as I would like it, so I'm going to add 1 more coat of resin. But really we could stop at this stage. If that was flat enough for us, we could stop at that point, but we want to add 1 more coat. Now you'll notice also the EZ Flo 120 opaques a little bit. That's why it turned a little cloudy there in the middle of the piece once it started to set. And we want that black or charcoal gray color as a background to our metallic effect we'll create later. Now again, we want to move fast. The clock is ticking. As soon as we stir those 2 components together, we have about 2.5 minutes of working time. And for this kind of process, since you actually want a higher viscosity, you can actually cool the resin down in your refrigerator, provided it doesn't touch your lunch meat, and give yourself a little bit more working time should you need it. You can also use 1512. May be used. It's a resin product that gives you up to 20 minutes of working time if you're coating very large pieces. Now, once we've finished coating our resin piece, we're ready to go and clean up the little drips. And that's one of the reasons we elevated that off the table, so we could make sure we didn't bond this to our table surface. And now we just go back and cut off these drips with a razor knife. And we're ready to do a quick paint job and finish detailing our piece. Now this is more of just a quick example here, just to show you what's possible using this technique. But to give this a realistic metal look, we're going to spray paint some silver spray paint over the top, and with that black background color we should have a very nice realistic metallic effect. We want to just very lightly dust that with some silver spray paint. You can also use the acrylic-based Silver B metal coating from Sculpt Nouveau that we have on our website. That's a good option for coating if you don't want to deal with solvent-based paints. If you do use that, you will need to lay down an automotive primer first so it will bond. Otherwise, an oil-based surface tends to repel an acrylic paint. Now we're going to add some galvanized steel bolts, or the look of galvanized steel bolts. Here we've cast up some EZ Flo 60 resin bolt heads in a 7120 silicone mold, and we show that technique in a couple of other videos where we dust some silver pigment powder into a silicone mold and then pour in some EZ Flo 60, and then we just cast up these little bolt heads and hot glue them into place, and all of that combined gives us a nice look of a stainless steel or aluminum part. After I shot the first part of this video, I remembered that I also had some packaging material left, a piece of styrofoam here, from a printer I bought a while back, so I thought I'd do the same process with it. I coated it with some EZ Flo 120 just to give it a nice gloss coating, and again, the resin coat also will prevent the spray paint from dissolving the styrofoam, so it's a very important step if you're going to use any solvent-based paints over the top. And here I'm coating this piece with some silver and also gold spray paint. And you'll notice we also created some little recessed areas using the hot wire foam sculpting tool. So it took just a very minimal work to create a neat looking prop here out of just some scrap styrofoam we had sitting around our shop. And there you have it. Couple of different ways to make some props out of styrofoam scraps you might have sitting around your workshop or your house, made to look fairly realistic using some hot wire foam tools and some extra spray paint. And keep in mind, all of the supplies are available on our web store. That is, of course, excluding any of the foam scraps.